Captain Jake Martinez stood at the bridge window of the Liberty's Edge and watched the massive space station grow larger as they approached. Nexus Prime was unlike anything he had ever seen. The station looked like a giant metal flower with 12 petals spinning slowly in the darkness of space. Each petal belonged to a different alien race that made up the Galactic Council. Jake had been preparing for this moment his entire career. After 50 years of watching Earth from a distance, the aliens had finally decided that humans were ready to meet them. The message had arrived 3 months ago, transmitted directly to every major government on Earth at the same time. The words were simple, but changed everything. Humans of Earth, you are invited to join the Galactic Council. Send your representatives to Nexus Prime. Ambassador Lisa Thompson walked up beside him, her hands clasped behind her back. She was a tall woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but Jake could see the tension in her shoulders. This was the most important diplomatic mission in human history, and everyone knew it. "Are you ready for this, Captain?" she asked quietly. Jake nodded and looked back at the station, as ready as anyone can be for meeting 12 different alien species for the first time. Dr. Kevin Barnes joined them at the window. He was the team's xenobiologist, a thin man with thick glasses who had spent years studying the limited information Earth had about alien life. His job was to help the humans understand the aliens they were about to meet, and to help the aliens understand humans. "The scans show massive energy signatures from all 12 sections of the station," Kevin said, adjusting his glasses. "Each species seems to have completely different technology and living requirements. This is going to be fascinating." Commander Amy Rodriguez approached from behind them. She was responsible for the security of the human delegation, though Jake hoped her skills would not be needed. Amy was a compact woman with sharp eyes who missed nothing. She had insisted on coming along despite the peaceful nature of the mission. "The docking bay they assigned us is in the central hub," Amy reported. "Neutral territory. No weapons allowed, but they've assured us that the environment will be safe for human physiology." The Liberty's Edge slowly moved into position at the docking bay. Through the reinforced windows, Jake could see movement inside the station. Shapes that did not look human moved back and forth, preparing for their arrival. Some were tall and seemed to be made of crystal. Others floated like gas. Clouds with glowing centers. Jake felt his heart beat faster. Dr. Elena Foster, their medical officer, joined the group at the window. She was a calm woman with steady hands who had volunteered for the mission specifically because she wanted to study alien biology. Elena carried a medical bag with her at all times, ready to help if anyone got hurt or sick. "The atmospheric readings are perfect," Elena said, checking her tablet. "They've managed to create an environment that works for all 13 species, including us. The technology required for that is incredible." The ship docked with a soft thud that echoed through the hull. Jake took a deep breath and turned to face his team. Ambassador Lisa Thompson straightened her formal blue jacket and picked up her briefcase. Dr. Kevin Barnes gathered his research materials. Commander Amy Rodriguez checked her communication device one last time. Dr. Elena Foster secured her medical equipment. "This is it," Jake said. "We're representing all of humanity today. Let's make a good first impression." The airlock opened with a soft hiss, and the 5 humans stepped into Nexus Prime for the first time. The central hub was enormous, with a ceiling that stretched up several stories. The walls were covered in displays showing star maps and alien writing in languages that hurt to look at. The air smelled strange but not unpleasant. It's like metal and ozone mixed with something sweet. Waiting for them was a reception. Committee unlike anything from Earth's wildest science fiction, a tall being made of what looked like living crystal, stood at the center of the group. Its body caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls as it moved. Next to it floated a cloud of glowing gas that somehow managed to hold a definite shape. Other creatures stood or floated nearby, each one more unusual than the last. The crystal being stepped forward and spoke in perfect English, though its voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Welcome, humans of Earth. I am Counselor Zethkar of the Dominion. We have been watching your species for many years, and we are pleased that you have accepted our invitation." Ambassador Lisa Thompson stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Thank you, Counselor Zethkar. I am Ambassador Lisa Thompson, representing the United Earth's government. We are honored to be here and grateful for this opportunity. The floating gas cloud pulsed with different colors as it spoke, its voice like distant thunder. I am Miralon, of the Unity Coalition. Your species shows great promise. We look forward to learning about your capabilities and sharing our knowledge with you. Dr. Kevin Barnes stared at the assembled aliens with wonder, trying to take notes on everything he saw. Commander Amy Rodriguez stayed alert but relaxed, her eyes moving constantly to assess any potential threats. Dr. Elena Foster watched the aliens with medical curiosity, fascinated by their different biologies. The formal introduction ceremony will begin shortly, Zethkar announced. First, we must complete the standard biological assessment required for all new species joining the Council. This is merely a formality to ensure proper environmental accommodations and to update our databases. Ambassador Thompson nodded. Of course, we're prepared to cooperate fully with your procedures, as they were led deeper into the station. Jake felt the weight of history on his shoulders. Humanity was about to take its first steps into a larger universe, and nothing would ever be the same again. The biological assessment chamber was a large white room with walls that seemed to glow with their own light. Dr. Elena Foster stood in the center, feeling slightly nervous as 12 different alien scientists surrounded her. Each one looked completely different from the others, and she found it hard to believe they were all intelligent beings from across the galaxy. Chief Researcher Vextar of the Hegemony floated near the ceiling. He looked like a jellyfish made of metal with long, silver tentacles that moved constantly. His voice came from somewhere inside his translucent body and sounded like radio static mixed with music. The biological assessment is a standard procedure, Vextar explained to the humans. We must understand your physical capabilities and limitations to ensure proper integration into galactic society. Please demonstrate basic human movement and manipulation abilities. Ambassador Lisa Thompson sat in the observation area with the other humans, watching as Elena prepared to represent their entire species. Captain Jake Martinez felt his hands sweating as he realized how important this moment was. Dr. Kevin Barnes took notes frantically, trying to record everything for future study. Elena stood calmly in the center of the room. She had practiced this presentation many times during the journey to Nexus Prime. I'll start with basic human locomotion, she said, walking across the room. The aliens watched with interest as she demonstrated walking, running, and jumping. A creature that looked like a walking tree made of copper pipes spoke up. Your species uses only 2 limbs for movement. Most council species use 4 or more. How do you maintain balance? Elena smiled and explained how humans use their inner ear and muscle memory to stay upright. She showed them how humans could walk on different surfaces and even walk backwards. The aliens seemed impressed, but not surprised. Now I'll demonstrate our manipulation abilities, Elena continued. She picked up a small metal cube from a table and held it up for everyone to see. Humans use these appendages called hands to grasp and manipulate objects. The aliens moved closer to get a better look. Elena held up both hands, palms facing outward. Each hand has 5 digits that we call fingers and 1 thumb. We use them to grip, hold, and move things. She picked up the cube with her whole hand, showing how her fingers wrapped around it. The aliens nodded, seeming to understand. Most of them had similar grasping appendages, though theirs looked different. Some had tentacles, others had claw-like projections, and a few had suction cups. But here's something interesting about human hands, Elena said, setting the cube down. We can control each finger independently. She held up her right hand and wiggled her pinky finger by itself. Then she moved her ring finger alone, then her middle finger, then her index finger, and finally her thumb. Each finger moved separately. While the others stayed still, the room fell completely silent. Elena looked around at the aliens, wondering if something was wrong. Their faces, or what she thought were their faces, showed expressions she could not read. Some of the floating creatures had stopped moving entirely. Others seemed to be vibrating with excitement or fear. Is there a problem? Elena asked. Chief Researcher Vexter's tentacles began moving much faster than before. Please repeat that demonstration, he said, his voice now sounding more like a fire alarm than music. Alina held up both hands and moved each finger independently again. She made her fingers move in a wave pattern, starting with her pinky and ending with her thumb. She had done this simple movement thousands of times in her life, usually when she was bored or thinking. The copper tree creature made a sound like metal being scraped against metal. Impossible, it said. No species can control individual digit appendages. The neural pathways required for such precision would be incredibly complex. Alina looked confused. But it's not complex at all. Human children learn to do this when they're very young. We use individual finger control for everything. Writing, typing, playing musical instruments, painting, building things. She demonstrated by pretending to type on an invisible keyboard, her fingers moving in the precise patterns needed to spell out words. Then she showed them how humans hold a pen, gripping it with 3 fingers while the others provided support. In control, Dr. Kevin Barnes stood up in the observation area, realizing what was happening. Alina, I think you should stop the demonstration, but it was too late. The alien scientists were already in an uproar. Several of them were making sounds that the translation devices could not interpret. Others were moving their appendages frantically, trying and failing to copy what Alina had done. Ambassador Lisa Thompson approached the barrier separating the observation area from the demonstration chamber. What's wrong? Is our physiology somehow dangerous? Dar turned toward her, his tentacles now moving so fast they were just a blur. Dangerous. You have no idea what you have just shown us. In all the recorded history of the galaxy, only one species has ever possessed individual digit control. They were called the Ancients, and they disappeared over 50,000 years ago. What happened to them? Captain Jake Martinez asked. Built wonders that we still cannot understand or replicate, Vexstar replied. Structures that seem to defy the laws of physics. Machines that work on principles we have never discovered. And then, one day they were gone. Every trace of their civilization vanished except for their impossible buildings. Alina lowered her hands slowly, beginning to understand that what she had thought was a simple demonstration had revealed something much more significant. So humans are the first species since the ancients to have this ability? Not just the first, said the copper tree creature. According to our historical records, individual digit control is directly linked to technological advancement on a scale that could reshape the galaxy. The ancients could build anything they could imagine, because they could manipulate matter with incredible precision. The room fell silent again, as the implications sank in. Alina looked at Ambassador Thompson, who had gone very pale. Captain Martinez was staring at his own hands as if seeing them for the first time. Dr. Barnes was writing notes so fast his pen was smoking. We need to inform the full council immediately, Vexstar announced. This changes everything. His alarms began to sound throughout Nexus Prime. Lena realized that her simple demonstration had just turned humanity's peaceful first contact into something much more complicated and potentially dangerous. The emergency session of the Galactic Council began 2 hours after Elena's demonstration. The humans sat in a special section of the chamber, feeling like they were on trial. Ambassador Lisa Thompson kept her hands folded in her lap. Suddenly, very aware of how her fingers could move independently, the council chamber was enormous, with 12 different sections built to accommodate each alien species. Some sections were filled with water, others with thick gas, and one section seemed to be made entirely of light. Captain Jake Martinez had never felt so small as he watched the alien representatives argue. About humanity's fate, Counselor Zethkar, the crystal being, stood at the center of the chamber. His voice rang out like breaking glass as he called for order. We are here to discuss the discovery that humans possess individual digit manipulation abilities. Chief Researcher Vexstar will present his findings. Vexstar floated down from the ceiling, his metal tentacles still moving frantically. Council members, what we witnessed today has not occurred in 50,000 years. The humans demonstrated precise individual control over their appendage digits, exactly like the ancients. A murmur ran through the chamber. Some alien representatives made sounds of fear, while others seemed excited. The humans could not understand most of what was being said, but the emotion was clear. The historical records are very clear, Vexstar continued. Every species in galactic history that possessed individual digit control became master builders and engineers. They created technologies that other species could not match or even understand. Dr. Kevin Barnes leaned forward in his seat. He had been studying the historical data that the aliens had shared with them. "But surely this is just a coincidence," he whispered to Ambassador Thompson. "Having flexible fingers doesn't automatically make you a super advanced civilization." Ambassador Thompson shook her head. "I don't think they see it that way." On the chamber floor, a new speaker approached the center. This was Counselor Prime Zethkar of the Dominion faction, a different being from the one who had greeted them. Earlier, he looked like a giant insect made of black metal, with 4 arms and glowing red eyes. The ancients were not just advanced, he said, his voice like grinding machinery. They were dangerous. They built weapons that could destroy entire star systems. They created machines that could remake planets. And then they disappeared, leaving behind only their impossible structures. He gestured with one of his 4 arms toward a holographic display that appeared in the air. The display showed images of ancient buildings that seemed to float in space without any support. Other images showed mechanical devices so complex that they looked like art rather than technology. "These are ancient ruins," Zethkar continued. "We've found them on thousands of worlds across the galaxy. Every single structure is built with a level of precision that no modern species can achieve. The components are fitted together so perfectly that we cannot understand how they were made." Dr. Alina Foster, who had caused this crisis with her simple demonstration, stood up slowly. "May I speak?" she asked. The chamber fell silent. All eyes, sensors, and other detection organs turned toward her. "I understand your concern, Alina," said her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation system. "But humans use individual finger control for peaceful purposes. We create art. We play music. We build homes for our families. We don't build weapons to destroy star systems." To demonstrate her point, Alina reached into her bag and pulled out a small wooden flute. She had brought it as a personal item, something to remind her of home during the long journey. Now she held it up for the aliens to see. "This is a musical instrument," she explained. "Humans make music by controlling our fingers individually to cover and uncover holes in the instrument. It creates different sounds that we find beautiful." She put the flute to her lips and began to play a simple melody. Her fingers moved quickly and precisely, covering and uncovering the holes and complex patterns. The music filled the chamber with a sweet, haunting sound that none of the aliens had ever heard before. But instead of calming the aliens, the music seemed to make them more agitated. Several representatives began making loud noises of distress. Others moved their appendages frantically, trying to copy the precise finger movements they were seeing. "Stop!" shouted Counselor Zethkar. "You were demonstrating exactly what we feared." Lena lowered the flute, confused. "But it's just music. It's not dangerous." "You don't understand," said Vextar, his tentacles now moving so fast they were creating a buzzing sound. "No species in the galaxy can create sequential individual sounds like that. The level of fine motor control required is impossible for any of us to achieve." The copper tree creature from the biological assessment chamber spoke up from its section. "We have tried for thousands of years to create devices that could produce such precise sequential actions. The engineering challenges are enormous." "Just did it with your natural biology." Captain Martinez stood up beside Alina. "What exactly are you saying?" "We are saying," replied Counselor Zethkar, "that humans have the same abilities that allowed the ancients to build their impossible machines. The same abilities that made them the most powerful species in galactic history." Another alien representative spoke from a section filled with swirling purple gas. "The question is whether humans will use these abilities as the ancients did. Will you build wonders, or will you build weapons?" Ambassador Thompson rose from her seat. "The people of Earth have no desire to build weapons or conquer other worlds. We came here hoping to learn and to contribute to galactic civilization." "That is what the ancients claimed as well," said Zethkar. "Right before they disappeared and left behind structures that we still cannot understand or replicate." The chamber erupted in argument as different factions of the council debated what to do about the humans. Some wanted to immediately quarantine. Earth to prevent humans from spreading across the galaxy. Others wanted to study human abilities more closely. A few suggested that humans might be the key to understanding ancient technology. Through it all, the 5 humans sat in their section. Watching their peaceful first contact mission turn into something much more complicated, Alina still held her flute. Wondering how something as simple as playing music could cause such fear among the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, General Patricia Collins, who had been monitoring the situation from Earth, sent an urgent message to the delegation. The message was simple but ominous. Prepare for anything. Entire galaxy is now watching humanity. The testing chamber was 3 times larger than the biological assessment room. The walls were covered with strange devices, mechanical puzzles, and broken machines that had been waiting for repair for thousands of years. Engineer Robert Hayes stood in the center of the room, feeling the weight of his species' future on his shoulders. "These are the tests," announced Chief Researcher Vexstar, his metal tentacles pointing at different objects around the room. "If humans truly possess the abilities of the ancients, you should be able to solve problems that have challenged our greatest minds for millennia." Ambassador Lisa Thompson watched from the observation deck with the other humans. The council had debated for 6 hours before agreeing to these tests. Half the aliens wanted to send humanity back to Earth immediately. The other half wanted to see what humans could actually do with their strange finger abilities. Robert walked over to the first test. It was a metal sphere covered in hundreds of tiny buttons, switches, and dials. Each one was a different size and required different amounts of pressure to operate. A holographic display showed the desired pattern that needed to be created. "This is the harmony puzzle," Vexstar explained. "It requires simultaneous manipulation of 64 different controls while maintaining precise pressure variations. No species has ever solved it because it requires individual control of too many appendages at once." Robert studied the sphere for a moment, then placed both hands on its surface. His 10 fingers found different controls and began moving independently. His left pinky pressed a tiny button, while his right thumb turned a dial. His middle fingers adjusted switches, while his ring fingers maintained pressure on sensitive pads. Within minutes, the sphere began to glow with the exact pattern shown in the holographic display. The alien observers made sounds of amazement and fear as Robert completed the puzzle that had stumped galactic civilization for over 2,000 years. "Impossible," whispered one of the copper tree creatures. The neural pathways required for such coordination should take decades to develop. Robert moved to the second test. This was a partially disassembled machine that looked like a metal flower with thousands of intricate parts scattered around it. The holographic instructions showed how the parts should fit together, but the assembly required holding multiple pieces in exact positions while connecting them with microscopic fasteners. Technician Maria Santos joined Robert for this test. She had worked as a watchmaker before joining the space program, and her hands were trained for delicate work. Together, they began assembling the machine. Maria held 7 different components in precise positions using only her left hand, each finger maintaining exact pressure and angle. Meanwhile, Robert used his right hand to install connecting pieces that were smaller than rice grains. His fingers moved with surgical precision, never disturbing the components that Maria was holding. The aliens watched in stunned silence as the 2 humans rebuilt the machine in less than an hour. When they finished, the mechanical flower bloomed with lights and began playing a complex melody that filled the chamber with beautiful sounds. "That machine has been broken for 5,000 years, said Counselor Miralon, the floating gas cloud. "Our best engineers estimated it would take a century to repair, even if we could figure out how all the pieces fit together." The third test was the most challenging. It was a control panel from an ancient spacecraft covered in hundreds of switches, dials, and touch-sensitive areas. The panel controlled life support systems, but it had been damaged in ways that made it impossible to operate safely. This panel requires 17 different controls to be operated simultaneously with varying pressures and timing, Vexstar explained. If any control is operated incorrectly, the entire system fails and must be reset. The margin for error is less than 1%. Programmer Alex Johnson stepped forward for this test. He had designed control systems for spacecraft and understood how complex machines needed to work together. He studied the panel carefully, mapping out which controls needed to be operated in which sequence. Alex placed all 10 fingers on different parts of the panel. He began with his thumbs, activating 2 primary systems. Then his index fingers brought online the secondary controls. His middle fingers adjusted pressure regulators, while his ring fingers monitored safety systems. His pinky fingers handled the most delicate calibrations. The panel came to life with a soft humming sound. Lights began flashing in perfect sequence as the life support system activated. Clean air began flowing through vents that had been silent for centuries. The temperature in the chamber adjusted to perfect comfort levels. The alien observers were now completely silent. Some of them had stopped moving entirely, as if they were in shock. Others were rapidly communicating with each other in languages that the translation system could not handle. The final test was brought in by a group of robotic assistants. It was a massive mechanical device that looked like a giant puzzle box, made of metal and crystal. The device had been found in ancient ruins, and no one had ever been able to figure out how it worked. "This is an ancient artifact," Vexter announced, his voice now sounding defeated. "We have studied it for 10,000 years. We believe it is some kind of power generator, but we have never been able to activate it safely." Mechanic Tony Rivera approached the device. He had spent his whole career fixing machines that other people said could not be repaired. He walked around the artifact slowly, studying its surface and listening to the faint sounds it made. The device was covered in panels that could slide, rotate, and pivot in different directions. Each panel had multiple layers with controls hidden underneath. Tony realized that operating the device would require manipulating dozens of different mechanisms in a specific sequence while maintaining constant adjustment of pressure and timing. Tony placed his hands on the artifact and began to work. His fingers found hidden catches and secret switches that the aliens had never discovered. He pressed, pulled, rotated, and slid different parts of the device while his other fingers held components. In precise positions, the artifact began to glow with a soft blue light. Energy patterns flowed across its surface like water made of stars. The chamber filled with a gentle humming that seemed to resonate in everyone's bones. Then the device fully activated. A column of pure energy rose from its center, providing enough power to light up an entire city. The ancient artifact was working perfectly after sitting dormant for 50,000 years. Tony stepped back and looked at the amazed aliens. "It just needed someone with the right touch," said simply. In the observation deck, Captain Jake Martinez realized that everything had changed. The tests had proven that humans could indeed manipulate technology in ways that no other species could match. The question now was whether the galaxy would see this as a gift or a threat. Chief Researcher Vexstar floated in the center of the chamber, staring at the activated ancient device. "By the stars," he whispered. "They really are the inheritors of the ancients?" The final council session began at dawn on Nexus Prime. The chamber was packed with representatives from all 12 alien species, and the tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Captain Jake Martinez sat with his team in the human section. Knowing that the next few hours would determine the future of Earth and humanity's place in the galaxy, Counselor Prime Zethkar stood at the center of the chamber, his black metal body reflecting the lights from the ancient artifact that still glowed softly in the corner. The device that Tony Rivera had activated continued to provide power to the entire station, proving every day that humans possessed abilities beyond what anyone had imagined. "We have debated for 3 days," Zethkar announced, his voice like grinding metal. "The evidence is clear. Humans possess the same individual digit manipulation abilities that made the ancients the most powerful species in galactic history. The question before us now is simple. Do we welcome them into our community, or do we protect ourselves from potential danger?" Ambassador Lisa Thompson felt her heart racing. She had prepared for this moment, but nothing could have readied her for the weight of speaking for all humanity. She stood up slowly, her hands steady, despite the magnitude of the situation. Honored counselors, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation system. I understand your fears. Unknown is always frightening, especially when it involves abilities that seem impossible. But I ask you to judge us not by what we might do, but by what we have already done. She gestured toward the glowing artifact. When we activated that ancient device, we did not use it as a weapon. We used it to provide power for this station. To help everyone here? When we solved your puzzles and repaired your machines, we did not demand payment or concessions.
No.
We did it because it was the right thing to do. A murmur ran through the chamber. Some alien representatives seemed to be considering her words, while others still looked fearful and suspicious. Counselor Miralon. The floating gas cloud pulsed with different colors as she spoke. Your words are reassuring, Ambassador Thompson. But the ancients also claimed to be peaceful builders. They helped other species, shared their knowledge, and created wonders that benefited everyone. And then one day, they simply vanished, leaving behind only their impossible structures. Doctor. Helen Garcia stood up from the human section. She had been studying the ancient ruins and artifacts for the past 3 days, trying to understand what had happened to the mysterious civilization. May I present a theory about the ancients? She asked. Zethkar nodded, and Helen moved to the center of the chamber. I believe the ancients did not disappear because they became dangerous. I think they evolved beyond the need for physical existence. Their technology became so advanced that they transcended normal space and time. She activated a holographic display that showed images of ancient structures. Look at these buildings. They're not fortresses or weapons. They're research facilities, art galleries, and what appear to be meditation centers. The ancients were not conquerors. They were explorers of science and consciousness. Even if that is true, said the copper tree creature, its voice like scraping metal, it does not change the fact that humans possess dangerous abilities. Individual digit control allows for precision engineering that could create weapons we cannot defend against. Captain Daniel Brooks, who had remained silent throughout most of the proceedings, finally stood up. He was a military officer, but he had also studied alien cultures and understood the importance of this moment. You're right, he said simply. Humans could use our abilities to create weapons. We could build machines of war that would give us an advantage over other species. 8. But we could also use these same abilities to solve problems that have plagued the galaxy for thousands of years. He walked to the center of the chamber and held up both hands, wiggling his fingers individually. These hands could build weapons, yes. But they could also repair the broken infrastructure on 1,000 worlds. They could create art that brings joy to beings across the galaxy. They could build machines that make life better for everyone. Susan Miller joined him in the center of the chamber. On Earth, we have a saying, with great power comes great responsibility. We understand that our abilities are unusual and potentially dangerous. That's exactly why we want to work with the Galactic Council rather than alone. She looked around at the assembled alien representatives. We're not asking you to trust us blindly. We're asking you to give us a chance to prove ourselves. Us work alongside your scientists and engineers. Let us contribute to galactic civilization under your guidance and oversight. The chamber fell silent as the aliens considered these words. Finally, a new voice spoke from a section that had remained quiet throughout all the proceedings. It was a deep, ancient voice that made everyone stop and listen. The Curator Council has remained silent during these debates, the voice said. We are the oldest species in the galaxy, and we have been waiting for this moment for 50,000 years. A section of the chamber that had appeared empty suddenly revealed itself, to contain beings made of pure light. They were so ancient and advanced that most species had forgotten they still existed. We knew the ancients personally, the curator continued. They were our friends and colleagues, did not disappear because they became dangerous. They left, because they had learned everything they needed to know about physical existence. They moved on to explore other dimensions and realities. The revelation sent shockwaves through the chamber. The curators had never spoken about the ancients before, and their words carried the weight of absolute truth. Before they left, the ancients told us they would send successors. Beings who would carry on their work of building and creating and exploring. They told us to watch for a species with individual digit control and the wisdom to use it responsibly. The curator's light grew brighter. Humans are those successors. They're not the ancients reborn, but they are the next step in the evolution of builders and creators. The galaxy needs them just as it once needed the ancients. The final vote was not even close. 11 of the 12 council species voted to welcome humanity into galactic civilization. Only the Dominion faction voted for quarantine. They were overruled by the overwhelming majority. As the session ended, Captain Jake Martinez felt a mixture of relief and responsibility wash over him. Humanity had been accepted into the galactic community. But with that acceptance came expectations and obligations. Ambassador Lisa Thompson shook hands with alien representatives who had appendages capable of the gesture. "Thank you for giving us this chance," she said. "We won't disappoint you." 6 months later, Earth became the center of galactic engineering and precision manufacturing. Human technicians worked alongside alien scientists to repair ancient structures and create new technologies that benefited everyone. The galaxy had found its builders once again, and this time, they were determined to use their gifts wisely. Elena Foster, the doctor whose simple finger demonstration had started it all, often looked at her hands and marveled at how something so ordinary could be so extraordinary. In the end, it was not humanity's weapons or technology that impressed the galaxy, but the simple ability to move each finger independently with precision and care.